Okay, welcome everybody. Hi, Cyril. How are you?
Thank you. I'm fine. I'm kacha, Yeah, not so.
Okay, good. Thank you for coming. Aristo, how are you?
Baruch Hashem. Thanks for asking, Rabbi.
Okay, awesome. Welcome, Bella. Hello.
Hi.
Hi, Moshe. How are you?
Shalom, shalom, Rabbi. Good to be here.
Amazing. How's it going, Omar?
Hello, nice to see you. All fine.
Thank you for joining. Alexandra, how are you?
Hey, I'm great. Thank you, Rabbi.
Amazing. Thank you for coming. Bella, how are you?
Hi, how are you?
Awesome. Great. And Rivka, how are you?
Good, Baruch Hashem. Shalom, Rabbi Solomon. How are you?
Great, great. Well, thank you everybody for joining. Okay, so we're starting a little bit late. This is what I wanted to do today. So next week we're not going to be having class because it's Purim. We're going to be very busy with all sorts of Purim stuff, Shalach Manos and everything. So what I thought I would do is we're going to go today. We're going to do a sikha. It's actually one of my favorite sikhas. I find it to be very interesting, very practical as well. And it's a one-off. We're started today, finish it today, so we can go into Purim with something that we learned for Purim. And then after Purim, we'll come back and we'll learn something. We'll start learning something for Pesach. Does that make sense? Okay, I'll take that as a yes. Awesome. So we're starting a little late, so let's get started. So the Gemara in Masechta Megillah asks a very interesting question. You guys are, I'm sure, familiar or somewhat familiar with the story of Purim, right? Everything started when the Jewish people went to the feast of Achashverosh, the king, and they had the whole part. Achashverosh had a whole party, and that's where the story really kicks off, right? With this feast. And after that, everything kind of goes downhill. Haman becomes he's appointed towards the king. And they want to kill the Jewish people, and we know how the story goes. In the end, we were saved, and now we have a beautiful holiday. So the Gemara in Masechta Megillah asks a question, a very interesting question. It says, what did the Jews do in the first place to deserve such a gzera, such a decree that they're going to all die? What did we do? Like, all of a sudden, God allows for such a decree that we're all going to die? And the Gemara answers something very weird, okay? This is what the Gemara answers. The Gemara says, I think Rosh Shimon ben Yochai is the one that's answering. And he says, the answer is because they enjoyed the feast of that evil person, of Russia, right? Who? King Achashverosh. Because they enjoyed the feast of King Achashverosh. Right? So that's a very, very odd answer, right? What was so bad about it? First of all, you would start thinking that, oh, perhaps, they ate not kosher, right? You're not allowed to eat not kosher. You go to the feast and you ate something that was not kosher. The problem is that the Midrash explains that this feast was actually, if you wanted kosher food, you got it. You can go to this feast and you could have 100% kosher food, right? We know that because the Megillah tells us that this feast was karatzon ish ve'ish. It was according to each person's will. So if you came in and you say, I want kosher wine, I want kosher food, you got everything with the best kosher food you can get. So definitely the issue wasn't that the Jewish people went to a feast that was not kosher, right? Because they were eating kosher. So why, again, what is the reason? What was so bad that warranted a decree that would eradicate the entire Jewish nation? Okay, of course, God would, never going to let this happen, but in the first place, why did they allow the decree to happen in the first place? Okay? Somebody attempted to explain, right? There's an alternative, what's it called? A potential answer And we say that King Achashverosh, according to the Midrash, was celebrating. What was he celebrating? He was celebrating the fact that the Beis Hamikdash was not rebuilt. Okay, I forget exactly how, but there was a certain cheshbon, a certain calculation that calculated that the Beis Hamikdash was going to be rebuilt, after a certain number of years. And according to the way Achashverosh calculated, that year ended and the Beis Hamikdash was not rebuilt. The Jewish people didn't go back to their land, and he was celebrating that. That's one explanation. So the thing is, what was so bad that the Jewish people were going to this feast? Is if this feast was in order to celebrate the fact that the Beis Hamikdash was not rebuilt, right? Then how could you do such a thing? Right, so that kind of like, okay, it was really bad. How could you go to a feast to celebrate the fact that the Beis Hamikdash was not rebuilt? The problem is it still doesn't answer the question, really, because even if it's a bad thing that you're celebrating, you're not happy you're not upset that the Beis Hamikdash has not been rebuilt. You're celebrating. It's just horrible. It's not a good thing to do. Horrible, very bad. That's still the question is: does that warrant death? Does that warrant death? Not only for those that were happy, but for everybody in the Jewish people, for kids, like what? How come? How could such a thing be? Right? That because you celebrated this feast. Now there's the pain of death, even potentially. Right? So that doesn't really answer our question. Now the answer is actually something that I find very, very interesting. And the answer is like this: we're all familiar with the metaphor, right? That we are like the Jewish people are like a sheep among 70 wolves. You guys heard of that? The sheep among 70 wolves? 70 being the nations of the world, the wolves, and the Jewish people is like a little sheep. And the fact, this metaphor comes from the Midrash. And the Midrash says, right, that the Jewish people are like a sheep among 70 wolves. And how does a sheep survive surrounded by 70 wolves? Think about that actual situation, right? It's not going to last very long, a sheep with 70 wolves. So how come the sheep survives? Well, the only reason why the sheep survives is because there is a shepherd, right? The shepherd is God, and the shepherd is protecting the sheep. And that's why the wolves cannot tear it apart. So the idea here is that the Jewish people live according to nature, according to logic, and according to the rules of the world. We are literally like a sheep among 70 wolves. And that means that we're not supposed to last very long. Okay? If you follow the way that the world's supposed to work, if you follow the way that nature dictates, if you follow plain logic, right? Any nation such as ourselves is not gonna survive. We're not supposed to survive. So how come we do survive? Well, we survive because we are not bound to nature. We survive because we're connected to something higher than nature. We have a shepherd. We're connected to God. The Jewish people function in a different plane. We function in a miraculous plane, in a plane of divinity, in a plane of connection to something that's above nature, right? So that's why we can survive. So in a natural plane, the way that things work out, the Jewish people, kaput, we're not supposed to survive. But because we don't work according to nature, because we're able to tap into, we live in a plane that transcends nature, therefore we're able to continue to exist and thrive. Now, the question is, when does this apply? This applies as long as we are relying on God. As long as we see God and we see, we're able to exist because of you. Hashem, you're the one that keeps us alive. When we understand, right, that ultimately everything is in God's hands, especially us, right? And us in a situation, like we said, we're a sheep among 70 wolves, where we're not supposed to survive. But we know that God is there and he's protecting us and he's saving us and he's making sure that we're able to continue generation after generation, right? We need to realize that. And that was the mistake that the Jewish people made during the time of Achashverosh. You see, when the Gemara says the mistake that the Jewish made, what caused this decree? It doesn't say, the Gemara doesn't say that they ate the Seuda, the feast of Achashverosh. It doesn't say that. It says that the reason why the decree happened was because they took pleasure in the feast of Achashverosh. What does that mean? Right? It means the Jewish people had to go to this feast. Okay? It's the king, and the king makes a feast and he invites you, and the Jewish people, halachically, according to Jewish law, we have to honor the king, even if, wherever land we live in, we're supposed to pray for the king, for the king of that land, and we're supposed to honor them, right? So, and respect them, right? As long as obviously they're not, trying to harm us or anything. So the Jewish people had to go to the feast. That was a given. The king invites you, you need to show respect, you need to show honor, and you go and you show respect to the king. Now, what they didn't have to do, and yet they did, is they were honored by it. They took pleasure in it. They felt like, look at me, I'm on the side of the king. The king likes me now. I'm protected. I'm under his wing. Okay? And when the Jewish people started feeling that way, right? They forgot this core point that we mentioned before. That in reality, right, we only survive because we're above nature. The moment that we embrace nature, we say, "Oh, I'm okay. I'm good. I'm not concerned about about the wolves." Why? Because Papa Wolf here is he's on my side. He likes me now. And then we forget who's really taking care of us. So when the Jewish people did that, what they actually did was they took a step away from who they are, the plane of existence in which they're miraculous. They understand that their existence and their survival is a miraculous thing, is being constantly, it's something that God is doing in a miraculous way. And then say, you know what, God, I'm okay. Achashverosh got my back. And we stepped away from that plane of our miraculous existence, and we say, we belong here in the world of nature, in the world of logic, in the normal world, right? And we are okay. We can survive because we have Achashverosh has got our back. So when we do that, okay, God says, listen, if you want to live in a miraculous way, if you want to be connected to me, if you want me to protect you, I've got you. But if you feel that Achashverosh is going to do a better job than me, then, that's your choice. And that's what we did. Okay, that's what the Jewish people did. The moment that they went to this feast and they took pleasure in the fact that Achashverosh was inviting them and that they were on the side, that Achashverosh was on their side, and they felt that Achashverosh, was the one protecting them, they stepped away from that divine protection. And therefore, what follows, right, this decree that the Jewish people was going to die was not a punishment. It was not God saying like, oh, you did something wrong, now I'm going to punish you. It was just the natural course of things, right? Imagine the sheep saying, again, as he said, saying to the shepherd, hey, shepherd, it's okay. This wolf has got my back. And the shepherd says, okay, that's the way you want it. What's going to happen? The wolves are just going to start coming closer and closer. The sheep is going to last a couple of seconds, and that's it. And that's exactly what happened. So it was a natural consequence. It was a logical consequence of what we decided to do that led to this decree. And it wasn't a punishment. It wasn't a punishment. It was a result of our choice. Okay. Let me see. Now, to understand this a little bit more, and to understand this a little bit more in the way that it applies to our lives, the Torah tells us that we're not supposed to rely on a miracle. Okay. We say, I just explained, right, that we, the Jewish people, are not really part of the world the same way that everybody else is part of the world, right? We have a part of God inside of us. We have a godly soul. And therefore, we live in a spiritual and in a miraculous plane, right? So if that's the case, you would think, okay, so, God's going to figure it all out for me. God is going to do miracles, and I don't have to do anything, right? That would be like the next logical step. But the Gemara tells us, no, we don't rely on miracles, right? We have to go out, and you have to, you want food, you want to make money, you have to go and work, right? So how do you balance these two things? On the one hand, you're telling me, right, that I don't belong in the world, that I'm higher than the world, so therefore I don't have to deal with it. Let God give me everything I need. On the other hand, we're saying, well, we don't rely on God doing miracles for us. You have to actually go and work. So the answer is actually something very, very interesting, and it helps reframe the way we see our daily lives. And the answer is as follows. The answer is that, as we said before, everything that we get, everything in our lives comes directly from God. It's a miracle. It doesn't come because it's the way that the world works. But God himself wanted us to deal with this world, right? God brought us to this world for a reason, right? He didn't just want us to be spiritual and holy, like he wanted us to deal with the world, right? So we need to recognize the following. When we go out and we work and we do what we have to do in order to earn money and, and deal with the world, that is just a vessel for the blessing that is coming from God. So when somebody else somebody that's not part of the Jewish people, they go and they work, right? They work hard and it pays money. And it's just how, they're part of the world. There's a logical, way that things work, and that's how they do it. When we do it, even though it looks very much the same from the outside, it's actually a completely different thing. We are getting our sustenance straight from God. It's a miracle. But God wanted us that miracle should be invested in the ways of nature. So he wanted us to go out and deal with the world and work with the world, right? So that miracle that's happening, that sustenance that's coming in a miraculous way, is coming through the garment of nature. But it's not coming because of nature. It's coming because of our connection with God. And we need to realize this. We need to realize that in reality, right? Everything that we're doing is a vessel and it's a garment. But at the end, what's gonna really cause our success or our failure, God forbid, is our connection and the blessing that we're able to draw down from our connection with God. And this is something that you actually see very interestingly in the way that the story of Purim played out. You see, when Hanukkah happened, we had a miracle. In Purim we had a miracle, and Hanukkah we had a miracle. But if you think about it, there were actually very, very different types of miracle. When you look at the miracle of Hanukkah, it was a miracle by anybody in anybody's eyes, right? You had a little bit of oil that lasted for 8 days. It wasn't supposed to. It was impossible. It was impossibility of nature that oil was going to last for 8 days, but yet it did. It defied nature, right? You could have the greatest scientists sitting there, scratching their heads, trying to figure out how did that happen. It was a clear miracle. Purim, there was also a miracle. But if you look at it, I mean, there's no sea splitting. There's no oil lasting more than it's supposed to. There was no 10 plagues. It's a normal story. I mean, a skeptic could look at the story and say, you guys were really lucky. It's just, it happened. None of the rules of nature are being broken, yet the whole series of events is not short of miraculous. So we see, right, the message that God gives us in this story of Purim, that God is telling us, yes, you have to go deal with the world. Yes, you have to go eat with Achashverosh, of course. But you got to remember that in that nature, in the dealing with the world, in the dealing with Achashverosh, with the evil king, in that, you need to remember who is really taking care of you. You need to remember what's actually happening. And it's not that Achashverosh is taking care of you. It's not that your boss is taking care of you. It's not that your job is taking care of you. It's not that you're really good at doing what you do. I'm the one that's taking care of you, says Hashem. It's a miracle that I'm giving you. It's coming straight from me because I love you. And all you're doing when you go and you work, right, when you deal with all these things, is you're doing it also because I said, because God said. And that's the message. That when we go through Purim, we see that God is not only in the miracles that define nature. He's not limited to being above nature. He is in nature, in everything that we do on every single day, in our work, in our food, in our beds, in our house, everything that we do, God is there. And everything that we get is coming straight from him. And if we don't realize this, right, and we start thinking, we over-obsess over our jobs, for example, thinking that, if I'm going to work and drive myself crazy and I'm going to worry so much over this stock and that investment, right? We over-obsess and we forget what's really the source of our success, right? You could invest from today till tomorrow. You can work on, from today till tomorrow all the time and have no success. and you can work very little, make one little investment and have all the success in the world. And that is not luck. It's coming from God. So when we over obsess over our work and our work and our work, and we forget about our families and we forget about God and we forget about why we came to this world in the first place, it doesn't make sense, even from a self-serving point of view. It's like, it's as if, this is actually an example that the Rebbe says, it's as if a person had a coat and decided to spend his entire time just making pockets to put all his money and forgets to go to work, right? You're just focusing so much on the pockets. Where are you going to put all the money? You don't go to work. It's pointless. So to here, right? When we realize that our work and our endeavors in this world are pockets, are vessels, are receptacles for the blessing to go into, but that the blessing is not coming from, how much work and how crazy we're going about work, is coming from God, then we start saying, you know what? Perhaps it doesn't make so much sense for me to rush my davening in the morning so that I can go to work, because perhaps it doesn't make so much sense that I don't have time to learn Torah because I'm so busy with work. I'm not suggesting for you to do something that's going to get you fired, right? And that's not at all what I'm saying. But what I'm saying is to realize that ultimately, our life is a miraculous thing. And that everything that we do when we deal with our day-to-day needs is only a vessel to actually receive that miraculous blessing. We don't work like everybody else works. And we learned that from Purim. So that is the Sikha in short. I don't know if you guys have any questions. No questions.
The Tanait Esther, is this the fast of Esther, right? The feast. Next week is Purim. No, what is called it?
Purim is going to be Thursday. Wednesday night and Thursday.
Ta'anit Esther.
Yes, that's a fast.
Okay. This is what I meant. Okay, this is fast. Okay. Yeah.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
What kind of advice would you give to someone who's who's going through a phase where they really need to put in the work? I mean, material work, like the work we do in the material world where we are right now. And it's kind of taking a toll on that person because of that, like long working hours. What would you say to that person?
So it's a tricky question because obviously, I don't know a lot of the details. I could write it off and just be like, yeah, trust in God and whatever, which is definitely a part of the answer. I'm not gonna lie, that is a part of the answer, but it's I would want to give you the respect of actually understanding the details of I wouldn't give anybody any advice without actually hearing the details of the situation. What I can say, that we can glean from this, right, is that it's important to remember, right, that we do have to put in the work. But ultimately, right, the place that, the blessing is going to come from isn't necessarily from us putting more work, right? Once we're already doing a reasonable amount of work for whatever it is that we're trying to accomplish, right? We need to realize that the success of that work is not necessarily going to depend on us putting more work, right? You're putting in the reasonable amount of work, right? You need to realize the success for that is going to come from our connection with God. So perhaps there's something we can do, that person can do personally, to improve the relationship with God. Perhaps are they davening to Hashem and asking for success? Are they doing the best that they can in their situation to connect with that? Are they realizing? A big part of it is just to realize that, that this work is again, it's, when we trust the work and we expect that because I'm going to work more, I trust that work, or I trust the boss. It's the same thing as trusting Achashverosh. You're relying on your work. God says, okay, let's see how that goes. If you rely on me, I'm going to take care of you. Again, that doesn't take away in any way the fact that the person has to put a reasonable amount of work, and that varies depending on what you're trying to accomplish. But it's important to realize that. So I say the general, a very general answer is, if, definitely don't think that that person should be working to the extent that it's harming you, physically, emotionally. Again, I don't know the situation. Sometimes the person's stuck with that, and it's hard to get out of that. I don't know, but I definitely think that unless it's a person needs to try to put in a reasonable amount of work, and then try to, focus on whatever they can to draw down that blessing in appreciating, relying, and trusting God that He will do what He has to do to bring that blessing, and that we're going to do from our perspective, not just the physical work, but the spiritual work as well, to connect, to be able to draw that down that blessing. That's what I would say.
Yeah, thank you so much. Of course, the person I was talking about is me, obviously. And thank you so much. You helped me a lot. And it was great to actually take some time off work and be here and watch this lesson. I was meant to be here today. Thank you so much for that.
And if you have any questions, or if there's anything else that I could help, please don't hesitate to reach out. I'm, can't guarantee that I'll be able to help, but I'll definitely try to do my best.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, guys. Thank you all for coming. You guys have a great Purim. Again, I won't see you next week, but Emir Hashem, I'll see you the week after that. And you guys go out and
Thank you, Rabbi.
Okay.
Cool. Thanks, Rabbi. Shkoyach. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Rabbi.
Que pase